Rain poured mercilessly on the deserted street, drumming against the rusted tin roof of a small, run-down house. Inside, Daniel sat silently, his little daughter asleep on his lap, the weight of unpaid bills crushing him like an invisible mountain. He had nothing left, except his dignity and the fragile smile he forced for his child. Then came the knock, a timid, hurried knock that didn't belong to a thief but someone desperate. When he opened the door, there stood a girl, soaked, shivering, eyes pleading for shelter. He didn't know that letting her in that night would change his life forever. Daniel's life was simple but hard, carved from the kind of struggles only a single parent knows. His wife had left 2 years ago, unable to handle the weight of poverty and responsibility. Since then, Daniel had been father and mother to little Lily. He worked 2 jobs, one as a mechanic by day, another cleaning offices at night. But even that barely covered rent, groceries, and Lily's school fees. The night was unusually cruel, rain beating against his small home as thunder cracked the skies. He had just gotten Lily to sleep after reading her favorite bedtime story when he heard the knock. It startled him. No one visited this late, especially in their neighborhood, which wasn't exactly the safest after dark. Cautiously, he opened the door to find a young woman, probably in her early 20s, drenched from head to toe. Her clothes clung to her frame, her hair plastered to her cheeks, and her lips trembled as she spoke. "Please," she whispered, "I just need a place to stay for the night. I'll leave in the morning." Daniel hesitated. He didn't know her, and bringing strangers into his home could be dangerous, especially with Lily asleep in the next room. But when he saw her eyes, wide with fear and exhaustion, something inside him softened. He stepped aside. "You can come in," he said quietly. "I don't have much, but you can dry off and rest." She entered, dripping water onto the wooden floor. Daniel handed her an old towel and one of his shirts, apologizing that it was all he could offer. She smiled faintly and thanked him, her voice soft and polite. As she changed in the bathroom, Daniel made tea with the last of the sugar. He didn't ask questions, though his mind buzzed with them. Who was she? Why was she alone in this storm? But he didn't push. He knew what it was like to need help and not want to explain everything. When she returned, wearing his oversized shirt, she looked different. Less fragile, more composed. Yet there was still something in her eyes, a sadness she carried like a secret. She introduced herself as Emily. No last name, no details about where she came from. Just Emily. They sat in silence for a while, sipping tea. Daniel kept glancing toward Lily's room, making sure his daughter slept peacefully. When Emily noticed, she asked softly, "Your daughter?" "Yes, Lily. She's my whole world," Daniel replied, and there was a warmth in his voice that Emily couldn't ignore. The night stretched on, quiet except for the rain. Emily curled up on the old couch, wrapped in a blanket Daniel found. Before she closed her eyes, she whispered, "Thank you for not turning me away." Daniel nodded, though she didn't see it. He didn't know why he trusted her, but something told him she wasn't like the world outside, cold and harsh. He didn't know this one small act of kindness would become the most important decision of his life. Morning sunlight crept through the curtains, casting golden stripes across the floor. Daniel woke early, as always, to prepare Lily's breakfast before rushing to his day job. Emily was still asleep on the couch, her face softened in slumber, her hair now dry and cascading like silk over the pillow. She didn't look like someone from the streets. Her hands were delicate, her nails perfectly manicured, though chipped by last night's storm. Daniel tiptoed to the kitchen, trying not to wake her. As he fried eggs and made toast, Lily came running in, her messy hair bouncing. "Daddy, who's that?" she asked, pointing to the couch. Daniel crouched to her level and whispered, "She's just someone who needed help last night. Be nice, okay?" Lily nodded, though her curious eyes lingered on Emily. A few minutes later, Emily stirred awake, blinking as if trying to remember where she was. When her gaze met Daniel's, she smiled softly. "Good morning," she said, her voice warm but still tinged with something, maybe gratitude, maybe guilt. "Morning," Daniel replied, handing her a cup of coffee. "You can stay for breakfast before you head wherever you're going." Emily hesitated before nodding. They ate quietly at the small kitchen table, Lily chattering about school and cartoons while Emily listened with genuine interest. For a fleeting moment, it felt like family, something Daniel hadn't felt in years. After breakfast, Emily stood near the door clutching her coat. "Thank you for everything," she said. "You didn't have to help me, but you did." "It's nothing," Daniel replied, though in his heart he knew it wasn't nothing. He wanted to ask her to stay, but that wasn't his place. Emily stepped outside, the crisp air wrapping around her as she walked away. Daniel watched her go, unaware that his life had already begun to change. Later that day, Emily sat in the backseat of a sleek black car, her driver scolding her for running away without telling anyone. She barely listened. Her mind was on the man who gave her shelter without asking for anything in return, a man who treated her like a human, not a name or a status. Because Emily wasn't just Emily. She was Emily Carter, daughter of a billionaire whose name opened doors everywhere. Yet last night, in that little house, she felt something money could never buy, kindness without condition. Days passed, but Emily couldn't stop thinking about that small, dimly lit house and the man who had offered her warmth without expecting anything in return. Back in her father's sprawling mansion, life returned to its usual rhythm. Lavish dinners, endless business discussions, and people who smiled only because of her last name. Yet everything felt hollow now. The world she once took for granted seemed so far removed from that simple night, where kindness spoke louder than wealth. Daniel, on the other hand, tried to forget. Life didn't pause for unexpected encounters, and bills didn't pay themselves. He worked tirelessly, juggling his mechanic job and night cleaning shifts, barely making enough to keep food on the table. Still, every now and then, he thought of Emily, her calm voice, her quiet gratitude, and the way she looked at Lily like she genuinely cared. One evening, as Daniel was fixing a car at the shop, a luxury black car pulled up. He barely noticed until someone called his name. When he looked up, his heart skipped. Emily stood there, dressed simply but radiating elegance that no ordinary girl could hide. "Emily," he said, wiping his greasy hands on a rag. "What are you doing here?" She smiled a little nervously. "I wanted to see you." "And Lily?" Daniel frowned, confused. "Why?" "Because you helped me when you didn't have to. And I didn't even explain." Her voice trailed off as she glanced around the shop, clearly out of place among oil stains and metal parts. He motioned her aside. "You don't owe me anything," he said firmly. "But I want to," she insisted. "Please, just hear me out." After his shift ended, Daniel brought her back to the small house. Lily squealed in delight when she saw Emily and jumped into her arms like they were old friends. The sight made Daniel's chest tighten in a way he couldn't describe. Emily spent the evening with them, laughing with Lily over crayons and storybooks while Daniel cooked a modest dinner. It felt strangely natural, as though she belonged there. When Lily finally fell asleep, Emily turned to Daniel, her expression serious. "I wasn't honest with you," she began. "My name is Emily Carter. My father, he's very wealthy. I live in a world far from this one. The night you found me, I had run away after an argument. I wanted to escape the pressure, the expectations. And then you let me in without asking anything." Daniel stared at her, stunned. He wasn't angry, just overwhelmed. Everything about her, from the poise to the subtle grace, suddenly made sense. "Why are you telling me this?" he asked quietly. "Because I want you to know who I am," she said softly, "and because I want to help you." Daniel shook his head. "I don't want charity, Emily." She smiled gently. "This isn't charity, it's gratitude, and maybe something more." For the first time in years, Daniel felt a spark of something he thought he'd lost: hope. Emily didn't disappear this time. She started visiting often, each time bringing something for Lily. A book, a new pair of shoes, small things that Daniel tried to refuse but couldn't when Lily's eyes lit up like stars. Soon, she was more than a visitor. She became a part of their routine. They shared dinners, walks to the park, and evenings filled with laughter that warmed the cold corners of Daniel's heart. Still, he struggled with the growing feelings he had for her. She was from another world, a world of privilege and abundance. What could a man like him possibly offer a woman like her? One evening, Emily finally spoke the words he'd been afraid to hear. "Daniel, I told my father about you." Daniel froze. "What?" "Why? Because I want you in my life," she said firmly. "Both of you." He wasn't happy at first, but he agreed to meet you. Daniel laughed bitterly. Emily, your father's a billionaire. I fix cars and scrub floors. He'll hate me. She reached for his hand. He'll see what I see. The meeting was awkward at first. The towering gates of the Carter estate loomed like a wall between their worlds. Daniel wore his best shirt, holding Lily's hand tightly as they walked into the marble-floored mansion. Emily greeted them warmly, but her father, tall, imposing, and sharp-eyed, measured Daniel with a look that could cut steel. "So," Mr. Carter said coldly, "you're the man who sheltered my daughter." "Yes, sir," Daniel replied evenly. "But I didn't do it for anything in return. She needed help, and that's all there was to it." There was a long silence before Mr. Carter finally spoke. "Most men would have seen an opportunity. You didn't." "I don't take advantage of people," Daniel said simply. Something in those words must have struck a chord, because the old man's sternness softened. Over the next hour, conversation flowed, hesitant at first, then easier as Mr. Carter saw the truth in Daniel's eyes. Weeks later, Daniel returned home with Lily, still unsure of what the future held. But that night, Emily showed up at his door again, smiling brighter than ever. "My father wants to help you start your own garage," she said. "But only if you agree to one thing." Daniel raised a brow. "What's that?" "That you let me be part of your life." "Not as a guest, as family." For the first time in years, Daniel didn't fight happiness. He pulled her close, and in that quiet, humble home, a love story began. One that proved kindness can bridge worlds and change lives forever.